We prove that the owner's situation is black. Good. I'm ready.
What could we have talked about in the 1AC besides racism?
Economic and, not economic, the issues of Cuban civil society, about why it's an anti-black society, and about the neoliberal and also racist justification beyond the U.S. embargo, which is probably within the topic.
I just asked you what we could talk about besides racism, and you responded with, we could talk about racism.
I don't know why that's a relevant question.
It seems like a relevant question to me. Why can't we discuss other important issues?
What are these other important issues?
How the plan affects Cuban people.
How the plan, by involving sugarcane exports, stops the terrorism, which stops the global war, all these internal link scenarios that make no sense.
Is extinction not a relevant question?
Extinction is not a relevant question because your claims are just exaggerated and false based upon racist discourse. Anti-blackness is white supremacy. The argument that anything that discriminates against the population within the United States, it doesn't necessarily have to be against black, it's just a system of white supremacy that discriminates against all of it.
How do we fix that system of white supremacy?
We say, and some of your cards say, that the way to do this is by starting within this debate by any means necessary. That's the Farley evidence from the 1AC. We need to resist the actions and interrogate the United States for its actions that it's done, take a look at history.
How does interrogation of the United States resolve racist policies?
As I just said, the interrogation of the United States looks at these racist policies, sees what's wrong, and fixes them.
How does it fix them?
Because we won't do them again. And also it says that you cannot rely on the United States federal government. It also makes a personal agency argument saying that we can take these problems upon ourselves.
Yeah, so Michael, what is the world of the alternative? Is there an alternative?
There is an alternative. It's the alternative by any means necessary. That's the Farley evidence, which is that any examples of racism must be rejected.
Yeah, Michael, that's a catchy phrase. What exactly happens in the world of the alternative?
It means that we reject racist things and focus on how we can do things better. So
world of the alternative is just reject them all racist things.
Yes, in this debate, it's not really that the next should win, just that the act should lose.
Okay, so is everything that the federal government does racist?
We say that the federal government actions have been grounded in racism, the use of and relying on federal racism, and specifically your plan and the way it's presented and its justifications. I
definitely think that we can have that debate, but I'm wondering if the federal government has the capacity to take actions that aren't racist.
Those capacities would be a nice thing to bring up in the 2AC, except we read specific pieces of evidence that relying on the federal government for actions such as these, which are grounded in racism, are racist.
Right, so can the federal government do a policy that isn't racist?
Yes, that is possible, except we say that the 1AC is not that.
Can the federal government pursue a policy solution that isn't racist?
I said yes, except the 1AC is not that.
No, okay, that wasn't the question. I just want to know if a political solution can be something that's not grounded in racism.
And as I said, by any means necessary.
That's again the catchy phrase. So in the world of the alternative, is there a way that we can export sugarcane ethanol to Cuba?
We say no. Take some prep. You read the debris add-on and the Tyson card of terminal impact. Am I correct? No. Okay. No, that was just for that question.
I just want to know if
So order. Just add power plant, sugar, ethanol, and I bet K, dissent, power plant, sugar, ethanol.
Take a second of prep. I'll just type it up for you.
I'll take mine out.
We use another 2 seconds.
So let's restart this order. Dissent, power plant, then Jackson. Then
how much did you use before the cross time?
We used 3, and then we used 3 before that, so 6 seconds, I guess.
I use like 9.
Yeah, don't ask that.
All right, 8:49.
We can call it 7.6.
We'll sacrifice the 3 extra seconds.
Extra 3 seconds worth. Make or break for this entirety.
You'd be surprised.
Wait, I'm sorry, now it's politics, kind of fatigue, sugar, ethanol?
Yes.
So no K now?
No, K after the content.
Power plant K, TA?
No, just said count plan K. Thank you.
I don't have the one in R.
Yeah, that's right.
You may begin.
We're not going for the disaccuracy. Also the political theory also concede that econ defense. That means they don't have any terminal impact. Now we'll read you lines from their economic defense. There are strongholds outside the United States, Asia, Japan, India appears well placed for decontrol of the United States through Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. This means that the United States is not needed to lead the global economic industry. We do not need to stand up for the increasing corn ethanol, corn export from Cuba. This means that the other countries are perfectly fine without the United States. This is just a Eurocentral knowledge that we are the center of the world, that we are important in the world when we are not. We have just exported colonizing neoliberal policies to Cuba in the past. Now go to the Carolina. The permutation is just a test competition. Now the condition Carolina reason to reject the R-not-the-T information processing tested that from a condition Carolina preferable always economic engagement advantage that justify many mechanism going to the crucial they say blanket rejection, but we are not that. We reject a specific instance which is the 1AC. They asked when the crossing whether the United States could do a good policy. Maybe yes, but we are saying that the instance of 1AC and the discourse representation justifications they have used are not good in the context of white supremacy. Now go on to the sugarcane ethanol. First, the topic is a red herring. Use imperialism necessary, a multiplicity of justifications, create the illusion of democratic consensus. As long as Latin American diplomacy remains a tool used to empower any benevolent intent, regardless if it's a lifting embargo, it's gonna be whitewashed. It's a Petros and 12, the anti-imperialism, the national movement of the colonized countries remaining a public region of territory used to Spanish colonial rule of Cuba, anti-imperialism, desire considerate group with the common political economic interests of the corporate leaders demand military action to protect power in the USA to capital grassroots operations in the Middle East to exchange Russia for US domination to bring benefit Western imperialism advantage via grassroots operations were multinational corporations. Now the first say resource world, I asked them in the crossing which country go to resource world. Obviously it's gonna be the countries that are dependent on the slavery based on Latin America, exploiting their getting their corn ethanol and using it. Redo the countries that are gonna go countries like United States, Europe, and China who have stakes around the countries like Nicaragua, countries in Africa are just living and farming to survive and to get these resources. There's no reason why the U.S. exports will survive this also. Now they say but discussion of environmental problems that goes to disproportionate affect on minority established privilege, marginalized minority due to affect environmental strategies. This is why in 2011 color unions comes into play in a way to give a connection between the given nation and nation of racism and focus on the harmful pollution and planet acting the daily facing the environment facing the people of color, marginalized background brown focus on the movement reinforce racial diversity and equality. Colors determine the ability to remove it to great strength and reinforce white privilege to build a global movement to go back to physical catastrophe and environmental must connect the dots between planetary discussion and real life being currently destroy whichever it's appropriate about color to do anything less than engage in foreign races, marginalized people of color, but weaken their survival. Now, there's this specifically shapes the way you view their impact on the nuclear extinction is Eurocentrism. This is Martin in the 80s used a large scale framed the world by poverty and starvation, disease, born by poor non-white people. Global nuclear war might kill fewer people than die of starvation, disease. Nuclear war would affect a rich white Western society. Director global war is non-white population relative to Westerners tend to identify their own place. The rest of us has to exaggerate the threat and destruction will make today of all of humanity. Now, the next are the warning about water vapor terms. They have messed this up. They say water vapor in causes feedback. That's exactly what we said. We say CO2 is directly traded off with water vapor. That means decreasing the amount of CO2 will increase the amount of water vapor. It's called this card also index their study saying is that the study are flawed and they will use anything to prove their argument that climate change is a bad thing, which we are not saying right now. Environmental movements operate from a white epistemology means the study are empirically fallen. They can never solve for the warming impact. Yamato, limit no one, the CO2 facility integration, unmade influence of whiteness on the environmental determined by the world perspective. The way to make sure American man is terrific detective to the environmental, all the social intelligence, it's an environmental justice and at least move to consider the employee the primary of the way of history perspective of the property and Purdue represent whiteness is the racial refer upon being not equal whiteness and the northern whiteness itself will not be exposing critical history of that rallying the offer has to stand of western influence and what way whiteness shifts all racial relation. Now the plan represents a small non-trivial change to racial hiring which made warning possible. There's a Randall and 08 the far of Roman hierarchy that find racial at least shepherd the inefficient approach to global warming that have profound effect on white consensus racial hierarchy what yellow bright highly radicalized society racial economy so because of clear right passion and cabinet actively are willing all structural ameliorated coverage, the more actively limit when maintaining the extended social framework, the focus on maintaining water privilege lifestyle, perfect power, the structural and impeded broadcast and comprehensive performance to global climate change. You can mark the card now the oxygen and on it is just for the people of color is suffering water pollution, air pollution every single day, and now you're just saying oxygen is not going to matter. Oxygen is the alarm. Their series are alarm assistance at SPI 08, the fifth of your monitoring providing under Co2 Tier 2 crisis, the oxygen percent after 20% thousandth of a year, the amount of oxygen after a huge amount of will change significantly. Now the honey's being turned. Yes, you care about honeybees, but you don't care about the black bodies that are being destroyed in Cuba, right? Currently, this is an antibiotic on wife's epidemic. Well.
Here, we'll start back. We have 7 minutes break.
Which one? The first one. Petrus? No. I said what? Wait, first name. Did you read this? Did you read this?
You have to mark all these cards.
LGB. I'll click this on.
Alright, we have 140. We have 140. Okay, actually, sorry.
Yeah.
What year?
Sorry, that was 5 extra seconds, so we have 135. Alright.
Oh, Dana's.
She's right
Oh,
there.
she is. Oh, okay.
She's just trying to get her computer to charge.
Are you ready for the order?
Check it out. Get some transfer. Then we'll get some water.
I want to go back to the day in school, like 2-minute period.
It wasn't. I mean, in this situation, for example, I'm eating food.
That's true.
2-minute window is key. Key to burger consumption.
It's also just like really awkward when you're just standing there, like ready to do the order, and you're pulling it out.
Well, if we had the internet, we could all just email it very quickly. We can track the internet. We do not have the internet. Yes, we do.
We do.
Oh. Okay, so when you all are dealing, you're supposed to be the young whippersnappers who understand how to use the technology.
Alright.
I'm actually still waiting for the round 1 when I see that I judge to arrive at Pony Express. Stop. This affirmative. This is Cuba. Stop.
Awesome. Okay, Sarah, what's yours?
Yeah, so it's the sugarcane ethanol advantage, then the Cuban economy advantage, then the politics DA advantage. Yeah, all set?
1 second. You don't speak for me.
Okay. Now we're good? Functionally conceived a food scenario, high food prices causes global balance and instability, guarantee drug reactors and nuclear weapons. The opposite of imperialism because only replaces corn ethanol and moves that to sugar ethanol, which means it's not a net increase in the amount of what they say slavery, but I really don't think it is because I'm not sure whether that exists in this estimate. But anyway, we are better for those countries because we export food to those countries to help them get out of poverty. The alternative cannot solve the alternative cannot solve because there is no the alternative cannot solve their arguments about an environmental discussion because it's only about racism. But anyway, our environmental discussion is productive, especially if it leads to something like the plan, which is productive, which proves a defense of our representations. I'm going to read evidence about the environment warming. The taking action against warming is key to solve racism. Smith and Time crisis, climate crisis, now about environment change, about an accident that about human and community on the planet. The effects of climate change will be neither distant nor incurable. This crisis may be the opportunity to radically reshape the political landscape and build a more just and sustainable society. The U.S. has traditional grounded its organizing politics of identity effects to ask the public to support the cause. We have failed to bring the movement together. Everyone first powerful enough to act on base of broad social reform. I'm marking that card at the word social reform, and now nuclear extinction is not rhetorical, especially in the world. It is especially in worlds where they have conceded that the plan is sufficient to solve that issue through several different internal links. Also, a fear that extinction is categorically different. Fear of it is good. Makes UK as a fear of the world is expressed people right through the sense of fertility by solution, the larger sense of identity, what is the suffering of our world, and collapse of the boundaries of the self. The fear for our world are categorically different from concerns of our personal survival. Appearance of culture suffering akin to compassion. We did not mess up this CO2. We did not mess up the water with vapor out. And the 2C evidence says that CO2 causes more water vapor, which in turn causes warming. None of the environmental arguments are racist because they don't speak to our specific offers, but they can say a bunch of facts like ocean acidification, coverage, pumps, and migratory birds, all sufficient cause extinction because we cannot adapt to it now. These terrorism advantage, there are no root cause arguments because people are already pissed off at the United States. Terrorists are already pissed off at the United States and the status quo. The plan is necessary to move back from that. Also, the Axel's US the intervention scenario is not racist because it didn't say that other countries are dumb, but rather there's a probability, there's a likelihood of conflict in the status quo because there's violence and proliferation in places like North Korea, Iran, etc., which none other evidence speaks to in the first place. Terror and then the ideology-based terrorism will continue indefinitely. The only way to prevent future acts of violence is hardline militarism by the U.S. Epstein in 2005, the argument that poverty causes terrorism is central to the American Viceroy war in Iraq, which is focused on limiting the root cause of terrorism is indeed too valid, global, but properly targeted military action, not well for handouts as means of doing so. Terrorism is not caused by poverty. September 11th attack did not America in order to take the Middle East richer. They desire to destroy wealth and slaughter. Genocide and productive human rights cannot be explained by the lack of monetary, and then the monetary interior poor quality of life. I'm marking that word and the card of the word quality of life. Now the politics is that. The politics, the corn ethanol arguments, there are evidence means of corn ethanol, which means it doesn't take out any of the U.S. The U.S. is still necessary to provide things like liberals. And they said the economy and the economic costs cause war, which means they went to their own critique because it says that we need to preserve markets and the U.S. should be in debt to get other countries out of debt and trade with them, which means that all the arguments about why races, the contradictions of racist links back to the alternative, now they're created. It's not the triad claim that the triad claim is not false because society's been together over the past 100 years, and now the evidence says that race is important, but not that it's necessarily the only thing we should just to talk about. There is no government because the United States has done productive things in the past through the government, like the 9th Amendment, like the Civil Rights Movement extension framework. The framework that you should evaluate whether the plan is in a vacuum a good idea or a bad idea. They can solve their arguments because they can still read race arguments, but you use it to justify race why the plan is bad. And the policy doesn't necessarily need to defend it. We don't need to defend everything the government just that we are a productive form. Framework is not racist because we have defended that our discussion is something that is productive. Permutation does not, and the permutation solves because it doesn't preemptively affirm America. It also recognizes racism. They have also shifted the discussion that was proven on politics. It's not mutual exclusive because we're not an increase in the government. We lift sanctions. Also, if the alternative is the alternative is not reject the government too, anything's not necessary, which means that people on the right and the government can always define some way to justify even more racism, which means the alternative turns back on itself. Even if we're not policymakers, we should still discuss policy so we can get a macro level analysis and force that as the same things. The Cuba link arguments are not about sugarcane ethanol. We cover a piece of 2AC evidence indicates that those are not beneficial for Cuban people, which means the reason why the plan is good. The 2AC is just an extension of the 1AC, and you should evaluate all arguments as something that's central to our advocacy because the 1AC is too short to make every single argument that might somehow be that might be productive to our discussion because we cannot say everything in the 1AC. Slavery already happened and we have advanced society, and the plan is necessary to combat or to advance that society from slavery and from the slavery in the past. Okay. Extending utilitarianism, it is not racist because we are saying that the plan is necessarily better for all populations. They have no evidence about why we bracket off those people from discussions. More evidence, Comiskey 96, if one only believes that beings have all equal value, then the position involves an act and only promoting lives as many of beings as possible. I'm marking that word as beings as possible. More evidence that role-playing is good. Joiner, and 99 bad exercises carry several specific educational objectives for students on each team by sports together to redefine content argument, and they gain the greater insight of the real world's legal dilemmas faced by many policymakers. Marked at policymakers. There's a lot of cards marked on that talk to you. Would you like me to flash you anyone?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
How much time do we have?
Quite a lot. You have 8:49.
For John.
Yeah.
Is it called 1A or this one?
Yeah.
I have just one card for you guys.
This is quite a rank absurdity. You complained earlier.
You would have 3 more seconds.
Thank you for the show. Round two. Round two. I tried throwing a flat track and it went above there.
Landed.
Someone threw flash back to Tommy and it went under one of the dividers and got stuck under there.
We had to like do a pull up to get it there.
Yeah, we brought the chair and then we like grabbed onto the ledge, pulled ourselves up, and then picked it out.
I mean, if it holds like if it holds geo, hold me. We're talking about it. All right. Order will be the K, Cuban econ, sugar.
Sorry.
Soon. Once again. Anybody not ready?
Okay, thank you.
Ready? Okay. They have fundamentally misunderstanding our critique is of the debate committee and a positive debate right now and how is it based on racist institution based on one issue defending the United States federal government while not doing anything about it in the policy and the racist institution and the strategy internal links right now the thing that's your favorite decision is a shot evidence drawn by the one here that specifically brings gives unique institute says that the positive debate is run by a white overly narrowly rational view of personality. This is a epistemological claim that the one here dropped that says you should have skeptics city for all of the claims because simply said that debate is co-opted right now by the white male elites and that was the only way to stop and that we need to get away from this, which is the only way to go. The Mills evidence contextualizes in the context of the broader American political system because the Mills evidence says that there's a racial conflict with America right now. Any use of federal government, any use of federal policy is tainted within that Mills of even all their claims about how the affirmative can be perceived as good will just be co-opted by the government, which is a Turns case or given that everyone's job guys are coming out of the situation. Now the impacts of this is twofold. One is the Mammy evidence. The Mammy evidence gives the political part of the impact saying that we cannot make any good political arguments without consideration that discriminating calculus is ethical and morally imperative. Now the second argument is about the termination of humanity, because isolation of racially oppressed groups leads to the termination of humanity. We control unionists right now. This is all here's more evidence that's made waiting for as long as into the racial social potential relevant competition, intellectual arguments, fairly common racial gender equality. They're creating answer maybe the company ideological justice repression by has dedicate self-and work to preserve racial social justice. We should constantly down and negative water. The peace of black American race isolate. The results be the termination of humanity. So the framework arguments are in response to you talk way too much on this framework today. Another talk argument is the agency impact of media companies since because Muscoli says that debating a lot of role playing is bad because it foregoes debate agency. We should be talking about real issues like social justice and things that Aaron Timmons talked about in his space 30 minutes ago, which is the only way we can have actual productive policy for our chain. Also, the second drop argument on this framework argument is the farley card from the white that says that using of the federal government is like bowing down to the slave right, saying that the federal government can actually create real change, and saying that the federal government has power over ourselves, which is the reason why we are tied to the federal government. Another third drop argument is that you should view the debate through the lens of the dispossessed. Also, the military, because if we don't do it from the lens of dispossessed, that'll get all the elites to co-opt that argument, and all the people in the federal government to do it. She said plan is vacuum, plan and vacuum is bad. You have dropped the federal interpretation saying that the judge be intellectual of basing could be political strategy. Our political strategy is about any means anything, which is not only just reject the YC, it's to reject their model of debate, which is a distinction that they do not understand. She said that the government can be productive. No, it is not. The farley evidence says that the government pretending is productive, which is what actually gives it out. The permutation does off. You have dropped the seventh argument and all the arguments about how the links are disastrous for permutation, because all of our links prove why the permutation bad. Also, you have dropped the Nakayama and Kruzak evidence. Whiteness is a slimy thing. It tries to get us out of our tough corners like GPN right now, but to doing this under permutation, only by doing this will give whiteness power to evade our criticism. Only by doing the full force of the criticism by any means necessary, like the farley card said in the case. She said the alternative is not just rejecting the government, the alternative is rejecting the government. The government is one form of institutionalization. The white is another form of institutionalization. The way they debate is another form of institutionalization. Now she said that should ethanol go further away. First, the farley evidence turns it because if the Cubans become dependent on sugar ethanol, that means that they'll be at the mercy of the United States federal government. The Petro 7, the Cuba evidence specifically says that the history of high-rate policy has been dominated by multinational companies taking advantage, which is the reason why if Cubans become dependent on exports, the U.S. can just cut them again and use the exports as leverage for the embargo. And now she said that the Tweezy's extension of the YC. No, it is not. This is where the silence in the government is coming really well, because they are trying to they're trying to just take our arguments to take our race. They're just trying to get our racist discourse when they are the ones who left in the first place. Now she said that slavery happened a long time ago. It's still happening now in different forms. Like, guess who made the sugar plantations in the first place? It was the slaves in Cuba who did, which is the reason why the wine is historically based on a historical fallacy. Now she said extend utilitarianism. Utilitarianism for who? The Barnes evidence in the case is also a lot of framework arguments say that utilitarianism is messed up right now because the policy leads are controlling, which will make it non-neutral, which is the reason why they want to wait. Now the Cuban economy manages the first side extend the terrorism and the costs are links dropping the way. See, the root cause of terrorism is because of U.S. domination, U.S. imperialism, which was causing in the first place. It is the marital evidence, and also the Jordan evidence specifically says that it's like manifest destiny. It's the same type of discourse that just survived Americans, killing Native Americans, enslaving black people, and expanding LNC. You let drop that constant argument. Your hospital's impact was based on proliferation. You think that other countries are dumb because of that rational factors and not try not to give them power. This is based on a Western imperial logic that should be rejected and independent reasons to reject the team. Now, the politics that we all went to this own argument because the YC did not take the claim that the U.S. is key to the global economy, which was a game source all about. Also, this was a new one argument which should be rejected because the debate dropped light. And now the shooting ranch. Another big thing actually right now is that you have dropped Martin Emerson said nuclear war doesn't cause extinction, which is the reason why none of your resource war argument will not happen. Now the environment debate, the affirmative racist silent discourse is attachment to environmental problems. The environmental activism that focus on pollution harms but ignores the disproportionate ways that affect minorities and these that you cannot solve the root cause of our consumption patterns, and that's the white evidence. Also, the funeral rolling racial hierarchies expects ineffectual market-based approach to climate change. If you ignore racism, you cannot make effective things to climate change because the basis for all climate change were race politics and white consumption. This means that the affirmative activism is limited to changes that maintain the existing spatial order. This answers all the environment arguments too, because you should prioritize the people dying in the status quo over the environment arguments.
140.
Alright, I'll start getting close to it. It's the cost of victory.
What? So you 2 hour later, is that the best season I have?
Yeah, you can hear all our conversations.
Oh shit.
No, maybe I did not see this. I did crack that spell and you're like, under your teeth, that's your turn.
I'm just trying to help them out.
No, what do you do? What do you be advice for you to be strategic and good down?
See, I did the cost benefit analysis for being perceived not as a huge threat. And overcome the cost of problem and impact defense.
Yeah. It's too busy highlighting numbers. It's like, you don't have 8 digits, you have 16 digits. Like, we're 188. You just like smoothly do second things. And if there's something to be able to grow the company.
Alright. Sugarcane ethanol. Cuba economy. Criticism. Is everyone ready?
If the plan is a good idea, that is sufficient justification for a discussion of it. We have proved that sugarcane ethanol exportations to Cuba are a good idea, even if every justification that's presented in the 1AC is not perfect, there's not a reason to reject the plan in its entirety. They have conceded that the food, even if it does not cause war, it causes suffering with individuals. The argument is that in the status quo, the way that we export corn fills in for other countries who do not have the capacity to produce enough food on their own. If they do not, then it causes massive hunger in those nations because they can no longer fill that method of supply. That hunger causes suffering, which accesses all of their impacts about ethics except for on a much larger scale because it accesses all of the third world countries that they make arguments about how we neglect. This just proves that policy making can be used to address these same type of issues that they talk about. It's also a specific scenario for how policy making can address these impacts. All the time it's generic and does not address whether or not the government should implement these specific policy. The 1AC is a defense of the policy that we have presented and is the reason why the state in this instance is good. The alternative does not have the potential to resolve any of the threats that are presented to the 1AC, which makes them all inevitable. Even if the 1AC does not solve them, it still means that their method for policy making is bad. Warming and all of the warming links are answered by the peace amendments and the 1ER, which is the only way that we have the capacity to address the issues of racism within a warming debate is through policy solution, because that is the only way that we can work within this system to address these problems, which is justification for the permutation. And also reason why the alternative does not solve any of this, because if we just say that solving for warming is racist, we can never resolve those actual racist policies, and it will always become inevitable. The plan for finding specific mechanism for presenting warming, which means if you decide to vote F because the plan is a good idea, it displaces corn-based ethanol, reduces emissions, which prevents massive extinction, the economy advantage. The terrorism stuff is not racist. The 1ER says that even if it is, it doesn't matter because that is the only way that we have the justification to provide any way to solve for these actual threats. We have a bunch of authors who prove that these people have attacked the United States and that they have intended to do so in the future. In addition, they have provided specific evidence about the terrorism, the terrorists that we identify in the context of the 1AC are racist, why it's a bad idea. The U.S. domination link is internal link turned by the entirety of the 1AC because we have proven that this is the only way to solve extinction, the only way to justify policy, and if we win that policy making is good, that answers all of these arguments. They fundamentally misunderstand the hotspots portion of this debate because it says that the U.S. is another country who has the capacity to irrationally act in the world where there is hotspot escalation. They can only do so if they have the capacity to manage it, which means that there is not refugee instability in Cuba. Now the politics stuff. Here is a framing issue. I really appreciate the speech that was just given and their attempt at an emotional appeal. However, they have not genuinely done so in this debate because they have presented the fact that Obama reducing the debt ceiling is a good political option, which was a defense that they took in this debate, which proves that none of the performance that they have made arguments about is genuine at all, and it is not anti-policy debate because they have also participated in the system. And if you decide that it's just a question of whether that policy debate is racist and they link just as much, and you should vote affirmative on presumption now, the critique itself, they have conceded the argument that in the world of the criticism, it just defers that we should always do the thing that justifies an end of racism, but they're always the least who have the potential to use that as a justification for doing the types of policies that they want, i.e. the right-wing people who don't care whether or not policies are racist. They do not have to provide
specific outline for how the alternative solves any of their impacts. All of their top-level analysis was they can see this and they can see that. It's really just the same argument, which is that the federal government is racist. It's not really that nuanced because they haven't provided any specific adaptation to the actual act. The alternative provides no mechanism for change. We just have to win that the idea of implementing the point is a good one. The strong evidence is not specific to actually using any sort of vehicle for rejecting those policy solutions, even if the alternative is an insight of them. It's not possible to get co-opted by the government because we've confronted a specific policy solution with evidence about how it works on the framework debate. We get to find the proposal in the 1AC. It solves all of their impacts because they can still make arguments why the 1AC is racist and why that is a bad idea, but we just get what we presented. We shouldn't have to win that the act is a good idea to get back on equal footing. Defending policy solutions is important. The 1A, join your evidence. That's the only way that we can come to conclusions and understand the evidence that we have presented. Even if we are not role-playing, which we probably are not, that does not mean that we shouldn't have the ability to discuss different policy solutions. Now, their new piece of evidence that they read about why it's key to humanity is about 1984, and you can see the analysis there in the 1 year about why policy making is improving in the status quo, and by the way racism is improving. It's just a justification for the permutation because the only way that we have the Constitution is working within the system. I'm going to answer these D's really quickly, which is that there's no link to any of the agency arguments because we are only discussing policy. We're not agency arguments. The policy arguments were all answered about the just index of the federal government. Now, the permutation itself, to do both is justified because there is no reason the policy that is presented by the 1AC is the only instance of racism or the reason that the 1AC. The 2NC is very explicit that the 2 links are stated in the link of omission, but he also says that we can work within the system to solve racism, even if some justifications are bad. If the alternative can overcome every other racist instance, it can obviously overcome the parts of the affirmative are racist. We've already defended why the federal government is a good idea. We've defended Cuban policy because it helps the Cuban people and helps the Cuban polity. The systems of the utilitarian consequence is good. That was all pretty much done off, but even if racism is important, we can never solve these problems if we are not alive. But if we do not have the political solutions, the policy-making skills, and the ability to confront extinction or famine, hunger, and other really bad things.
And the recording with that.
I got one here too.